Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the ACL podcast. The ligament is once again a little bit dismembered, but we got our Alex Deimel. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good. We keep catching L's. This is, we're two-thirds without L's so far, but or two-thirds without our L, so we are catching the L's. But we're doing good. We're doing good. I'm not gonna lie, man. We're tweaking about the Wings game tonight. That has been,
Mm.
aside from homework, all on my mind today. Probably the biggest game since 2016, but you know,
No big deal. No big deal.
no big deal. It
We'll
doesn't
we'll,
really matter.
we'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit here about the transfer portal and the Tigers, who righted themselves a little bit today, but we're on not so great of a streak there for a moment. And we're going to talk, of course, about the national championship. The numbers came out not as popular watching wise as the women's championship game this year, but still an improvement. And to be honest with you, you don't get a matchup of the two best teams all the time, but it's Christian Peck-Dimit, it's Alex Deimel here on the ACL show, and we're back, baby.
We are. Can I just first say, doing all of these radios, your radio voice, holy shit, you're killing that right now. I just feel like I just called into like some random ESPN radio station right now and I'm being introduced. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's normally one of those where you'll at least see like a 1 versus a 3 seed in the championship. Last night we had both 1 seeds. In fact, I had a buddy of mine last night say, like, how are there 2 1 seeds now? Mind you, that shows how much he knows about the tournament. But it is kind of crazy that's how it ended up. I know so many people out there were pulling for NC State. I know I was. Um, but I guess that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. And I mean, even you put up 30 plus points and still, I can't imagine being Zach Edey right now.
Oh yeah, and
Like
he
he
got
put
he
up,
got carried a little bit, or he
and
sorry, he carried a lot is what I meant to say. He
and
carried a
then
little bit.
I do want to get your thoughts because this was one big thing I caught just going into yesterday, like him chirping with Hurley. Like what I
I
don't know. I've never, unless it's like the opposing coach is going after one of my guys, it takes some balls to go after, you know, the coach of the other team unless he's coming at you first. And I don't know if that's how the interaction started, but that you got to have some, at least a little bit of cockiness to do that.
So I'll tell you what the broadcast said and what it looked like was timeout starts. Hurley comes over to talk to the officials. I think this was after Edie had set that moving screen that maybe
Yep.
was a moving screen, wasn't called. And I think because the subject matter was this guy was moving, Edie then chimed in and Hurley snapped back at him. So the fact that it was started by the player, Edie in this case, I think it makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean, Hurley's
that's
also Hurley just nuts.
the balls on Edie to go after any coach, and maybe the lack of respect to go after any coach, but especially one that's as crazy as
Nuts.
Hurley is. Yeah, nuts.
Nuts. Like, I mean,
He
I think
pushed a
he's
player. He pushed his player
well, I always think
yesterday.
he's gonna, and I know, we're kind of hypocritical as Michigan fans. Juwan Howard may or may not have
We like
assaulted
a guy that fights for his players.
but no, like every time I'm watching him on the sideline, I think he's gonna have a stroke. Like he just is that animated, and that's not to say that you don't see college football coaches getting animated. I mean, everybody knows the Bobby Knights of the world. Like, it's kind of bad if you aren't an animated college basketball coach because it seems like that's just the game. But it was like kind of crazy to see that interaction. But definitely you know two great teams, and I think UConn just kind of proved to everybody that thought that they're I don't know they had many doubters, but if they did, they completely proved them wrong.
No, and that's the wild thing is I don't think they had any doubters at all. You look at this team, and it might just be one of, if not the best college basketball teams ever assembled. Part of that is due to the modern day landscape of the transfer portal, and we'll talk about that here coming up in a little bit. But we were talking about it actually off the air in the ACL chat yesterday, and we pointed out that this more than any other sport, at any other level, boys, girls, pro, college, any sport, is the hardest for the best team to actually win the whole thing. The number one overall seed, since they started doing number one overall seeds in 04, obviously they had seeding before that, but back in 2004, they started within that saying, okay, this is the best seed going into the tournament. This is the second, third, whatever, all the way down ranking within the seeds. Once they started doing the number one overall seed in 04, only now five of those number one overall seeds have actually won the whole thing. And this is the first time since 2013 when Louisville did it. So in the past 11 years, counting this year, it's just
nightmares.
UConn.
That nightmares of that Louisville Michigan game. But
Yeah, as Michigan fans, we're not proud of that, but the fact that it's been this long, that it's almost an accepted fact that because of the madness inherent in March, the best team basically never wins it. And yet we got the two best teams in the tournament in the championship. Purdue and UConn were the two best teams in this tournament. And it is so rare. Only one time in the last 11 years has the actual best team on paper won the whole thing. Not only that, they did it without breaking a sweat. The Huskies trailed for 5 minutes. I think it was 5 minutes and 27 seconds. The entire tournament, they never trailed by more than 5. Absolute domination. And it seemed like they beat the brakes off of anyone that ever got close. Because let's be real, I know we should be advocating for our Midwest teams here, so I'll do that a little bit. Purdue would probably have won the championship last year or the year before or the year before, not the year before that. But still, this is a team that ran into an all-time buzzsaw. And I think that's pretty wild. The viewership was down a little bit, well, technically up, but down from what they were expecting. But you almost can't knock it. You know what I mean? Where this level of domination it's unheard of.
no, absolutely. And it is, I like talking about the viewership too. It is kind of crazy. And we talked about it a little bit last week with Luke, how, is this kind of a, I guess, is this an indication of how bad the WNBA is? But I think like it is easily the most entertaining tournament in sports. And that is solely due to the fact that any sports fan, unless you're rooting for your team or you're a psychopath, wants to see an underdog win. We got to have Jack Goki on a couple weeks ago, and we love talking to him. The reason that team blew up was because Kentucky has always been known as such a blue blood, and Oakland hadn't even made the tournament since 2010. I'm not even sure if they'd ever won a game in the tournament. So everybody
That was Greg Campy's first tournament win, and he'd been coaching the Golden Grizzlies, 40 years?
Yeah. So everybody wants to see an underdog. And I think it's not going to go to the same extent, and they can't really go to the same extent in football. But that's a huge reason for them expanding the college football playoff. Everybody wants to see an upset.
Along that line, I know this is not what we're slated to talk about. Don't worry, we'll get to the Tigers and the transfer portal here. But really, I was surprised that the naysayers about expanding the tournament we're on football now, expanding the college football playoff were right, because everyone you've ever heard complain about the college football playoff in the back of your local bar with like 3 teeth and a hat on, sitting in the camo hat on, sitting in the corner, shout out P&G, was always, well, it's just gonna the slippery slope of you expand it to 4 and then it's 8 and then we've got a whole basketball tournament going on, and obviously that would increase injuries and all kinds of things, but at the end of the day it brings in money for the NCAA. I was surprised at how right they were as quickly as they were, because all of a sudden we're getting propositions for a 16-team tournament, maybe bigger. Do you like that?
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know if it's a dislike. I just don't know how they're gonna make it much bigger with. I mean, they've got the when is the combine's normally what? Late mid to late March, early April, somewhere in that line. The draft's in April. Guys aren't going to be wanting to play that many games with NFL futures on the lines. As much as I hate to say it, and it does go back to a conversation I got into the other day where it's like I for a long time it takes me a while to adjust to change in any sport. It even took me a while to adjust to the pitch clock, as crazy as that sounds. With my ADHD like being able to not focus on anything, you'd think that shortening a time frame with something would help. It took me a while to adjust to that, but more to that point, like I was dumbfounded when I heard. I still remember being in middle school and thinking they're ruining the sport of football. This is gonna suck. This isn't gonna be as fun. And obviously, I'm used to it now, and I can enjoy the tournament style. But at the same time, how much can they stretch this out? Because they got to give teams a full week, or at least unless they're just going to say, hey, you just played 60 minutes of bash our heads together one day. Let's go do this exact same thing the next day. I don't really think you can do that like you can with basketball.
To be fair, bowl season right now, especially with the playoffs, you get what, a month off in between
That's
your chip
yeah,
games? Do you backfill it in there? This is already a break the kids need, and you're cutting then into that Christmas time and the winter break that the kids get. You're also, of course, going to increase injuries. And at what point does this get at something Alex alluded to? Players opting out. I know you didn't say it word for word like that, but I know you're thinking it in the back of your mind.
yeah,
Once you start increasing the number of games in this tournament, they become less important. And I know that sounds oxymoronic because you already had, I mean, this year was the epitome of it. Oregon and Washington was an extra playoff game. Ohio State, Michigan was an extra playoff game. You got a little bit of that already, and there are certainly going to be important games. But if you got a 16 team tournament and you come in as the 15 or the 16 or the 14, 13 seed, and you're maybe not slated to, you're staring down the Alabamas or the Michigans of the world, and you say, maybe I'm going to go be a top 5 pick. Why would I risk injury on a minus 13 and a half point spread? I don't know. I think you start risking because at one point, I know there are people watching this thinking or listening saying, why would you opt out? It's a playoff game. That's what the kids care about. That was said about bowl games at one point,
yep,
right?
yeah,
I think it's a dangerous slope there. And I know that I now sound like the toothless guy in the back of your local bar, but I do believe that. I just think it's a dangerous precedent you're setting. And at the end of the day, I don't think that a 13 seed, I don't think there's 13 teams that can win the college football playoff. I just don't.
no, and I think there is something, and I don't know what the secret is, but there is something inherent about basketball and about how the game is played that allows for this. I mean, there's a reason teams get paid to go to blue blood schools in football and lose. There is a reason team, mid-major or even like, schools that most people have never heard of are getting paid to go play as those non-conference games that are basically just warm-ups for the regular season. And it again,
Those
it
still,
does,
you get paid in basketball too.
or yes, and I think, but I think it is to more of a different level where you're also at the same time you're seeing spreads that I mean, gosh, I don't even know, but it is like if I don't know, Michigan versus UConn coming to play football is going to be very different than Michigan coming to play. Like you have to go all the way as far as Northwood for that to be like a okay. Like I think that's something like that. Not to slight anything
Is
against Northwood,
Isn't Northwood D2?
and they're in Hillsdale's conference, so not any slight. And even on to that point, which is something I wanted to talk about, especially like with the transfer portal. Um, it is which obviously has exploded in the past couple of years. And a kid I know who plays baseball at a D2 school, they lost their coach took another job. They were in the middle, and just about the entire team into the transfer portal. And I'm sitting there talking to him over the summer. Is like, are you excited to look somewhere else? And he's like, honestly, I don't really want to leave. But if there's going to be an opportunity to go somewhere where I know the coach or someone who I don't know if they're going to play me is going to come in, I have to do what's best for my career. And that is where it is this really tough line, I think, especially for, or at least I would hope for, non-athletes who are more of just fans of the game to be like, there's the aspect of those who stay will be champions. There's also the aspect of I could have a career in this. You have to kind of, if in my mind, you would have to level those two. And that it's never going to be an easy decision.
No, and I think that the transfer portal. Did you see the other day this whole um, super conference potential? There was a for those of you that don't know, go read The Athletic wrote a great piece on it, but you can find writing on it everywhere. There's an organization right now built up by let's say the big names of college football, chancellors of certain teams or of conferences, and all of these big wigs that are coming together and saying we need to demolish and lay flat the current landscape of college football, or rather of college sports, not just football, and then say we're going to make this all into one big super conference. And while I disagree with the way that they laid it out, and we can get all into the fine print, go read it for yourself, make your own thoughts. It's an interesting layout. It's got relegation and promotion like they've got in the Premier League. But my biggest thing uh, is that there is change that needs to happen because you might not like I didn't, the way that they laid it out, or you might think it's too similar to how they do it right now. But you look at the current state of college sports, especially on the men's side and especially in basketball, but in football as well. Coach Cal leaves. Probably half of his recruits are going to Arkansas from Kentucky with him. It
Yep.
happens to every coach. Excuse me. You get all kinds of these different players moving around, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing for these kids, or that you should take away that decision making ability from them or the opportunity to go somewhere else. But what it does is it kills viewership. Because you know why? There's a lot of reasons nobody cared enough to watch this year's championship. I did. I'm a basketball nerd, but I'm the outlier here. It was a big point spread. That had something to do with it. It was at 9:20 Eastern on a damn Monday night. That had something to do with it.
Just a little.
It was on TNT and not CBS, which statistically is in, on average, less households. That had something to do with it. But you know what else had something to do with it? The fact that no one gives a damn about these players that have been at your school's team for 6 months, and in another six are going to be at somewhere else. I don't begrudge them that choice. I don't think it's bad that they have that opportunity. But when you look at the NCAA as a place that wants to make money in college sports, that hinges their decisions on where the green is coming from, I think you're losing green over this. And I think that there's big change in the next 5 to 10 years, not only in the transfer portal and the way it's set up, but almost because of that, all of our conferences, maybe even the governing body. We might not even have, you got to remember, the NCAA is just a body that oversees college sports. The NCAA cannot exist without college sports. College sports can exist without it. There are teams in the NAIA for that reason. I think we might be heading towards some sort of change.
And it is interesting. I think like first the idea of relegation blows my mind. I don't know.
Right?
It would, but again, it was the CFP blew my mind when I first heard about it. And now it's just a thing and everybody accepts it. And I think, as that happens, people get less surprised when they talk about expanding it. And I think you can also kind of say the same thing with NIL in the sense that, yes, every player should have the right to make money based on their own image and their name. The fact that, I still have like my number 16 Denard Robinson jersey. And used to, when I was a kid, you'd see so many people wearing those at Michigan games, but he couldn't have his name on the back and he couldn't make any money off of it, which is just ridiculous. But there's also at the same time that sense of, okay, not only are they getting scholarships to come play here, but now they're also able to make money on the side. At what point do we consider them, in a certain sense, professionals? And it is a bit of a debated topic. I could see it go either way, but it's like, okay, at what point are they coming here to do a job, a legitimate job, not even just coming to be students? They're coming here to do a job that is setting them up for a next level. Like, at what point is it literally just the minor leagues?
Should they be employees of the school?
It's still, I go back and forth on it. I go back and forth on it. And it's funny
You're
because
the
the other day,
chancellor of the NCAA right now. The fact that that's a title, crazy to me.
yeah, don't get me started.
Should the NCAA has plenty of problems. We'll fill a whole show with it sometime during the summer. Should they be employees of these schools, or at least of the conferences?
I just wonder. It depends on how you're going to look at it. I wonder what type of, if they're calling them employees, what type of benefits they would be forced to, the school would be forced to give them. What benefits are necessary for the school to give them that they're not being given already? And I think it would vary. I think a lot of schools, and I don't, obviously it wouldn't. I think they're already making money through scholarships, so I think there's that aspect to it. But when they're, when someone's going out and they're doing an NIL deal with, your local car dealership, is that because of the school? And is that the school's, like,
That's
are they
different,
doing it
though.
as a representative of the school, or are they doing it as representative of themselves?
Of themselves, that's different. You can still be an employee of the school and also get that money from that.
I guess my question is what benefits do the players get from that they aren't already getting from being on scholarship?
Well, I think what it does is it protects the players as employees. And I think it would foster a little bit of loyalty as well, because that would involve signing contracts. How many teams
Yeah.
and players would sign 1 year contracts? Probably a few, or probably most. But if you're going to get, especially a recruit out of high school, to sign a 3, a 4, even just a 2 year deal, and it becomes more like free agency, it becomes more like pro sports, but we're on that direction already. Just make the full leap, make them employees so you can make all of this. And that's another thing. If you're going to get players that have to honor their contracts, you need coaches to have to do that too, and not just say, I'm going to opt out or buy out or whatever. I think that that allows the players more protection. And at the same time, it allows the schools to be safer with their bets.
That's fair. My next question is okay, you signed that 4-year deal with that coach who recruited you. But then
And
that
then he's
coach
gone.
has that yeah, that coach is gone the next year.
It's a great
You get a
point.
coach
That's a
that
great
comes in
point.
and is like, I'm bringing in this new guy, and you're stuck with your contract. Do you have to include opt outs? At what point is this literally just minor league football or
This is
minor
just
league
the real
basketball?
world now,
Yeah.
right? This is the real world where if I sign with X broadcast company, in my case, but you go sign at a hardware store, um, most of you are free will employees, i.e., you can be fired for any reason, you can leave for any reason. But let's say you're upper level or whatever, and you sign a contract, and then your boss leaves, whoever recruited you leaves. Tough shit is the answer there. But I think that players, if we go this way, it ends up with players having buyouts the same way coaches do, and a possible opportunity for leaving. Then you start getting into really watching exactly what you're saying, Alex, the minor leagues, where what does James Harden do when he's not going to get traded and he doesn't want out of he wants out of his contract, but the Rockets don't want out of him? What happens when a Zach Edey, who was a nowhere coming out of college, obviously he loved Purdue, wanted to stay there, had a great career, multiple time player of the year, but he was a backup at IMG Academy. What happens when Alex Deimel gets recruited to go play at the University of Michigan? Congratulations, Alex. And you sign a 4-year deal because you're a nobody. You're a 3-star recruit going to Michigan. And then suddenly you become, again, congratulations, Alex, a 4-year starter and your player of the year in your second year. How much do then schools desperately want to retain you to the point where you make them forfeit and play through their contract, even though they want to forfeit it? I think you get into a lot of tough questions. but you've already, I had a co-host say this a while back, you've already squeezed the toothpaste out of the bottle. You're not bottle out of the tube. How are you going to get? Hopefully, no one does toothpaste in the bottle. I don't know. Let us know if you do. You can't really put the toothpaste back into the tube at this point. You've made NIL and the transfer portal a thing to the extent that you kind of just have to pile up the toothpaste on your sink in one spot and hope for the best.
This is a hell of a fucking analogy we've got here. And I was like, I appreciate the very generous yet holy shit, what are you thinking? 3 stars on my recruiting profile.
Congratulations.
Uh, but I also, I guess at that rate, where do academics even fit in? Where does at what point is it you're not going? What is it? Literally the fucking Cardell Jones. I'm not going to play school.
Well, there's the idea. If you are an employee of the school, do you have to be enrolled there? I think that might be something that's, has to do, that would be an NCAA thing because eligibility, how does that work in? If you're not actually a student there are grad students that are still using their 4 years of eligibility. Would you have to be enrolled in that school to get a contract with them? There are custodians
And
that are
yeah,
working at that school that aren't, I mean, enrolled there. Do you
and
have to be?
at that rate, at the same time, I don't know. I played for 2 years. I declared for the draft. I go get drafted. I played for 4 years. I shit the bed.
Oh, yeah.
If that's
And come
my
back.
minor league option now, I
Well,
can technically go back and enroll as a fucking 26-year-old. Or
the
my math
NCAA
is off,
does
but
have if you enter the draft, you forfeit the rest of your or if you are drafted, you forfeit the rest of your eligibility. But I get what you're saying in that you go play
what's your minor
Europe or
league sport?
something.
I guess that's your minor leagues, but at this point, that's where I think that is the only drawn line between it being a college athletic and then it just going over and being a minor league sport. Because once you've crossed that threshold where you are completely getting rid of the academic side, and let's be honest, like I, I don't think a lot of guys, especially that are going to D1 schools, are really thinking much about the degree unless it's been instilled with them. And not that that's right or
Shout out
wrong.
Caleb Love.
Big shout out Caleb Love, but I'm not. It's up to you to decide whether that's right or wrong. But at what point is it? At what point does the athlete at the end of student athlete completely diminish?
And that's something that you gotta ask. Do you need?
Or
I
rather,
don't
the
know that you
student
do, but at the
part,
same
not
time,
the
are
athlete.
you now? Yeah, because then what the schools would do, because they're recruiting these pro teams, would then have to create their actual teams, like of their student teams, and then we'd restart because you have to give those kids the opportunity to play college ball, whatever, but they're not pros. Yeah, I think at the end
It's
of
a
the
whole thing.
day, when you talk through, like we just did, these opportunities to move forward in college athletics, you start to get more and more worried that the cat, we're going to switch up the analogy, is out of the bag or that the toothpaste is already down the drain. You're
Yeah,
fucked is what I'm saying. I
yeah,
don't I don't know if there's a ton of options to cleanly pick this up without recreating the slate.
that's true. We could probably go on about this for another, I don't know, 2 hours, but we are going to save it because I want to get into a little bit of Tigers baseball. Um, Hell of a start. I was so excited. Things kind of took a turn, but it's what we thought we're gonna. The offense is going to have moments of struggle, and unfortunately that's going to force great pitching 25-8. And I think it rubbed me the wrong way. I know he didn't have a great outing, but Kenta Maeda has only pitched in 2 starts. Tigers fans, that's it. He's gonna need more than that. And just because, and yes, I know I said he was, my one of my Cy Young Award candidates for this year, but just because Scooball's been pretty fucking good doesn't mean he can't shit the bed either. Major
I,
League Baseball has 162 games. You are going to win, you are going to lose. You are going to get fucking killed. You are going to kill teams. That's baseball. It is April. and the Tigers have a winning record. Let's not count our fucking chickens before they hatch, please. And I will also say, I get very hypocritical of this. Is when the Pirates go up 5-0 the other day, I immediately turn off the TV and I'm like, I'm fucking done. The season is over. You have to sit back and tell yourself this is not the end of the season. Is it frustrating baseball to watch early on? Yes. Everybody was shitting on Torque to begin the year, last year, and then he went out and had a 30 home run season.
That
It's
was my
early.
biggest question. And you're sort of answering it right now, but I do want to know. Uh, for those of you that aren't Tigers fans, started beautifully, had a really great start to this year. What, 6 and
Last
0,
team
then
undefeated.
last team undefeated, best start in more than a decade. Turnaround drop one to the Mets to end that series. And then you kind of stare down the A's as probably a bottom three team in the league in the whole MLB this year, and you get swept by them at home. Then you drop the first in the series to the Pirates. You cleaned one up the other
We
day.
got one. Don't
My
don't don't
my
completely kill us.
my question to you is: are you worried? It's a super long season, and I know you just said you're kind of not. Is that not at all worrying that you lose a series to one of the worst, maybe the worst teams in baseball? They don't have a city, but they have a series win to their name now because of the D.
Even the worst teams in baseball get a series win. Even the worst teams. It's kind of, you can make the argument that there are times where it is a little bit like hockey, where good teams match up with bad teams, don't match up well with bad teams on paper sometimes, and that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. Yeah, if you were to ask me this question in the middle of a game when the Tigers are getting shut out, I'm going to say yes, I'm worried. The season is over. I can't watch anything else. It's done. It's another year of misery. If you're going to listen to rational Alex speak, it's not even, we're not even 10 days into April. It's this very well, we still have a winning record that, yes, very well could go to shit. It's very exciting to watch your team be the last undefeated team and start the year 5-0. That's always awesome. Especially, but at the same time, that beginning series sweep was against probably one of the worst team, or projected to be one of the worst teams in baseball this year. The Mets, who we took a series from, have not, don't look great. It's so early. Nobody really knows who's good and who's bad. You have an idea of who's going to make the playoffs, and I think it's, if you're going to tell me that you're going to put a decent amount of money, again, gamble responsibly, I don't know, the Dodgers to make the postseason, yeah, I'd say that's a pretty safe bet. I mean, I would hope they're going to make the postseason. They just spent more money than I even want to think about ever making on their salary cap alone. So it's one of those things. It is early. I get it's very easy to be pessimistic. Come on, give it some time. The season doesn't end in a week. It doesn't work that way. It never has worked that way, and it never will.
You did give something away there. You have an idea of who's going to the playoffs. AL Central. Who the hell's coming out of here? Because it's clogged up to start when you sort of do your
Not
pre-playoff,
Chicago.
pre-playoff, your pre not Chicago.
Shit.
Yeah, and Detroit's not making the playoffs in basketball either. But you look at the AL Central, and you sort of went into this season knowing Twins, Tigers, Royals, probably who's going to be battling for it. Cleveland comes out of nowhere, has a really nice start to this game. Obviously, I still don't think they're really in the running, but Tigers at 7-4, KC at 6-4, and has a couple of easy series ahead of them, or favorable at least. Minnesota down at 3-5. How do we feel about one of the, if not the most open divisions in baseball?
This is a question that I'm not gonna lie. Like, I ask me closer to the trade deadline when you at least know. I think this season is, yes, the Tigers have brought in so many people, but that's the other thing about baseball is teams can completely shift their focus by that point. Like, it'll depend on who's gotten hurt. I think the obviously hitting is the biggest struggle right now, and it has been the biggest struggle. I think there's a chance they compete for a wild card, but if this is going to be how the team is going to hit all year, There's no way we make it above 500. The team and there's always this team can hit. I mean, we've seen it already. They putting up 7-run games against the or I guess 6 runs against the Mets, but putting up a 7-run game against the White Sox. It's not that this team can't hit, but will they? That's the biggest question. And that sounds it's as stupid as it sounds.
It does sound kind of dumb. I'm not
Can
gonna lie to
can
you.
can this team hit? And if they can't, are they going to make moves? Because the pitching is there so far. The pitching is there. You're gonna have days where people are gonna give up 5-6 runs. Happens to the best of them, unless I guess your name is Garrett Cole. But come on, it's way too early to judge the season. It's easy to make predictions, but I don't know. I'm not
If
sold
you
that this is a
if you
playoff
had to
team.
make a prediction, I hate to do this to you. I don't
If I
hate
had
to
to
do
make a
this to you.
prediction, they look like a wild card team to me. They look like a team
The Tigers.
yes, they'll it looks like a team that'll make it right into the wild card. It'll be one of those where it comes down and they'll squeeze right in, like I hope the Red Wings can do tonight.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I know puck is dropped. I just need
That game
Alex
will
Ovechkin.
be over by the time this episode drops. Thoughts? Finish of this season, obviously kind of been a roller coaster for Wings fans, up and down
I
throughout
do
this
have.
year.
I think this is finally the game that DeBrincat scores. I think it's been 17 straight games now without a goal. This is his game. This is where DeBrincat will come out and get another goal. Just need to contain, play half decent defense. The game against Buffalo on Sunday worried me because it was not the Wings playing great hockey game. It was Buffalo just playing awful, awful hockey. And I don't know that I've really even seen a good, I guess TNT game this year, at least like that the Wings TNT games, just to be frank. I'm sure there have been great ones, but I think this is obviously it's a do or die game. It's going to show whether or not the Wings really deserved it. I know everybody blames the priority patches, but you have to kind of think, rationally here. They beat this team 8-3 in February. They lost in overtime, I want to say less than a month ago. This is a team they can beat. The offense just has to be there, and the defense has to keep up.
Larger, you squeeze into a playoff spot here because of how they were playing a couple of months ago. Is this ultimately sort of a disappointing season because of where you were? Is that
No,
too much, too well overstated?
no. I think I wasn't expecting a season. I wasn't expecting a Bruins team or a Maple Leafs team. I was expecting a team to, if they were going to make it, they'd be maybe that third position in the Atlantic or make a wild card spot. This is not a bad team by any state. I mean, and as we know, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. I mean, the Bruins had the best season or one of, if not the best season in NHL history, and didn't even come close to making the Stanley Cup. That is truly the game of hockey, as far as I know.
Well, we kind of have a calm before a storm here because as much as we're in this little spot where we've basically got some regular season baseball, it's all regular seasons right now. Within the month, we're hitting the postseason in the NBA, the postseason in the NHL. We've got the draft coming up. We've got a ton of exciting stuff. It feels like the calm before a storm, but we'll be talking to some potential draftees coming up. Maybe not in the NFL, but some potential draftees. We're going to be talking about the NBA, which of course has a wild finish in its standings set. I know that Pistons fans and some honestly Midwest teams are struggling in the NBA this year because it's tough. I think that we're gonna have a ton of fun over the next couple of months, and make sure hit that subscribe button, the follow, depending on what you're watching. The ACL is only 2/3 here right now, but we'll be back in full strength next week, and we'll have a guest, so you don't have to listen to us talk the whole time
Yes.
either.
And please feel free. If you disagree with our takes, leave a comment. Tell us how stupid we are. If you
Yeah,
agree with us, tell us how great we are. Tell me I am going to be that 4-star recruit one of these days.
three
I
star, three
really
star.
love
Let's
to
be
3
careful.
stars. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. But please feel free to go ahead, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment if you're watching on Instagram or any of our socials. We'll be back next week.
We'll be back in a week. This has been ACL.